Get that little hand.
Call this meeting to order.
Yeah.
Raucous crowd. This time we have any comments from the public of anything that's not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting. Have a consideration for approval of the agenda.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager. Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Just like we should keep going, but
I know.
no way to keep going with.
The core groups you guys have.
Next is consideration of approval of the minutes of the February 25th and the March 4th meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on the minutes? Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Next is consideration of the approval of the consent calendar. Any questions on the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Next is business of the mayor. I just have one item tonight. Stuart Colson is on the Housing and Redevelopment Authority Board and would like to resign his position there, and he still has 1 year left on his appointment. So I'd like to appoint Beth Deers to take his space. Beth has had some previous experience in working with housing boards and housing authorities, and so she's very excited to be able to be a part of this, and so I'd like to present her for replacement of Stuart Colson's term on the Housing and Redevelopment Authority Board.
So moved.
Second.
Any further comments? Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Thank you. And I think they have a meeting coming up this Thursday, so she'll get right into her job, so,
She's excited. Thank her for stepping forward.
yes, for sure. Next is a request for use of city property and street closure for the Cedar River Shiver.
Are you leading that?
Is this closing in Charles City or Nashua?
Yeah.
You leading that shiver, man?
Shiver down
Are
river.
you leading that
No.
shiver?
I'm announcing, but I'm not leading. Mr. Mark.
Good evening. Mark Wicks on behalf of the Community Development Office. We got a couple of street closing requests. First one is for the Cedar River Shiver event, which is still on for this Saturday, depending on what the river does. We'll see in the next couple of days and make a decision on Wednesday. But as of right now, it is on. We are requesting closure of Riverside Drive just from St. Mary's to the boat dock, just that stretch there. So St. Mary's to Riverside Drive, the other direction, can still be accessible. We'd be putting a couple of heated trailers, a registration trailer. The bridge is going to have a beverage and refreshment tent there. They're offering free refreshments on Saturday. And then we'll have the participants. The event begins at 3 o'clock. Registration will be from 1:15 to 2:45. We expect to be out of there, all told, about 4:30.
Got quite a few people signed up.
We are slow in registrations, but that is typical. Everybody kind of sees what they can get together for teams, what the weather's going to be like. So we are spreading the word that it is still on at this point. We're even trying to get our police department to get involved here. We shall see. You know, I know we have several teams around the community talking about it. So the next couple of days are going to tell the tale.
This could be an excellent year to try and do it again because it's supposed to be pretty nice on Saturday.
It's supposed to be about 54.
Yeah.
And we will restrict the area involved so it does not go out into the main current.
I believe when I did, the river temperature was 48 degrees. It was very acceptable.
You said you're trying to get the police department involved?
They're talking about it.
No comment.
I think they challenged the city council to match it. That's just a rumor I heard.
And the clerk, right?
I don't piss off the clerk.
I was so moved for this. before we-
Thank you.
You moving for the clerk or for the whole thing?
I'll second.
The next one is for the annual 4th of July. I'm sorry, I got to vote on that one first.
Yeah,
I'd ask if there's any further discussion. I think we've had plenty.
I think so.
Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
All right, now, Mark.
Next one is for the annual 4th of July celebration, which is going to be, it'll start Wednesday, July 3rd with Kids Day. The streets would all the streets would reopen by about midnight or 12:30 a.m. on Sunday, July 7th. It's the same layout as was last year. We're looking for Kelly from North Jackson to North Main and Blunt from North Jackson to North Main closed that entire time. And then North Jackson from Kelly to Blunt closed during the event itself. The police department's going to put no parking signs there during the times it is open.
Any questions for Mark? It's like pretty much the similar streets as normal.
Very similar to last year.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
The only difference would be if, we'll probably do the big stage for some of the bands, like we did last year, have a couple trailers and have it that diagonal, except we'll probably switch intersections and go over to Blunt rather than the other one because of the way the sun sets, so people aren't looking right into the sun.
Good idea.
Any further discussion? We have a motion.
Yeah, motion is second.
Sure, I'm looking at you.
That's what I thought you were, but I thought that you were kind of questioning me, but what's new? Clerk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
And Mark, did you also want to add that request for chick?
Yep, I got two more. So I've got a parade permit for the 4th of July parade itself on July 4th. Exact same route as last year. Everything's the same as it was last year for that.
So moved.
Same setup and everything.
It'll set up on 13th, come down North Grand and North Main, over to Riverside and back up.
Okay. Nice second.
Further discussion? Call the roll on this one.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
And then we added one more at the police chief's request. On April 6th is our Chick Fest retail promotion going on. We will be having horse-drawn carriage rides as part of that downtown. They're going to be loading at Central Park there, right across from our office, where Farmers Market is usually set up. Farmers Market will not be going that early yet. We were just going to cone up, after talking to Steve, we were just going to cone off some parking spots, but you brought up a good point, that it'd be a lot safer for the two horses if we just closed that entire section of Blunt for that block. That would also allow their trailers to stage on the other side of the street there rather than curve around their back parking lot. And that would be from essentially 7 a.m. until about 2:30 in the afternoon.
Can't think of anything that should impact. on my
Should not.
end. So moved.
Any other questions? Call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Next is a public hearing on the North Jackson and South Main asphalt projects. Open the hearing. Filing of affidavit of publication.
Yes, Your Honor.
How about any written comments or objections?
And Your Honor.
Do we have any oral comments or objections tonight?
Move to close.
Motion to close the hearing. Clerk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Next then will be consideration of resolution 3219, which is approving the final plans. We'll have discussion on that.
Yes, on this project, the council approved the preliminary plans and set the hearing and letting dates for the project at your November 19th meeting. The project includes construction on North Jackson Street from Blunt to Lane and South Main Street from 5th Street down to about a block south of 9th Street. This is essentially an asphalt overlay project. What we'll do is we'll mill the existing surface, make minor repairs to, if we have to do any minor patching, as well as repairs to the concrete and gutter. There'll be some improvements to intakes, and we'll place new asphalt surface. The project will also include upgrading the sidewalks to include the ADA curb ramps. There'll also be a storm sewer extension on the south main portion, which is basically from the Parkside, what we'll do is take drainage from Parkside development, we'll direct that south to that, the storm hydrant runs parallel to the Charlie Western Trail. We followed the DOT lighting requirements, and the project was designed to meet the DOT requirements as well as the standard DOT specifications that are being used for the project. So I'd recommend approval of resolution 32-19, approving the final plans and specifications.
Questions for John?
No changes yet, as far as what we're looking at, no changes.
No.
So moved.
Any further discussion?
And the funding for this is coming out of,
It's a swap funding. It's basically it's federal aid, but it's swap, so it's we're using state dollars.
no city tax, no city dollars. Right. We all know that, people that are watching this. We're swapping out with them.
Any further discussion?
Don't remember talking about it for the South Lake project, is that gonna have the entire road closed off, is it every single lane?
No, it will be closed. But it's an asphalt overlay, it's not a reconstruction, so it should go.
Anything else? Questions? Call the roll.
Yeager. Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Put both of those down because I don't use them.
Next is consideration of resolution 3319, which is then awarding the contract for this project.
Yeah, the DOT letting in February was on the 19th of February. We received two bids. First, the low bid was from Heartland Asphalt out of Mason City. They submitted a bid of $805,949.53. Blacktop Services, they submitted a bid of $943,293.59. The cost estimate on the project was $890,000, so Heartland's Asphalt was considerably less than the estimate. And funding is from it's called SWAT funding. That's that new program where the state takes the federal aid dollars and then they use state dollars for to send out to the cities and actually help to reduce the amount of paperwork involved. And also SWAT funding is allowed, we don't have to have any city participation, it's 100% funded. And we had $920,000 in SWAT funding for the project, so we'll have, with the bid of $805,000, we'll be able to fully meet, fully pay for the project, the SWAT money. And now the DOT, they concurred with the bid, and what they're asking the council to is to also concur in the award. And then resolution 33-19 also includes approving the contract and bond with the contractor. So I'd recommend approval of the resolution for awarding the bid and approving the contract.
With the swap funds being 920, can we use any of the rest of that for, as long as we have those people in town, we can go further if we need to, on the streets, or? You just-
Well, if there's something, additional work, we'll cover that, but we can't go beyond what the project is.
What the bid was.
So it's no bid alternatives.
Correct.
Those funds available for another project at another time.
They go back into the NICOG.
Into the pools. I assume that's what it was.
Be nice if
That's
we
correct.
This way the money gets some money for once.
So,
Second.
Any other discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Yeager.
Good to get that Well, when is the starting date for that, John?
We don't have a starting date established.
Okay.
So,
Oh, yeah, it's this summer's construction.
July 8th. Just saying it after 4th of
Yeah, we'd make it a little nicer if it doesn't start on the 2nd of July, probably, yeah, Mark?
July. Final entry in the parade.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It'd be a good activity for the 4th of July events, you know. All right, moving on to Resolution 3419, which is accepting temporary construction easements for these same asphalting projects.
Yeah, as I mentioned, part of that project is upgrading the sidewalk curb ramps at each intersection. And with the ADA requirements, the slope of the sidewalk can't be greater than, can't raise any higher than 1 inch for every foot. So what happens is, many of those intersection corners, the sidewalk has to be lowered. And so then, at the corner of those yards, we have to regrade that to match the yard to the lower sidewalk elevation. We actually have 14 easements on the project. There's 5 on the South Main portion and 9 on the North Jackson Street portion. And with this resolution is approving those easements and authorizing the mayor and the clerk to sign the easement agreements on behalf of the city. So I'd recommend approval of resolution 34-19.
If any of that regrading, John, would require, quite a bit of drop, to make it work, would there be any like blocks to hold, so a person doesn't end up with a real steep yard to try to mow and
Yeah, that's why
take
we
care
have the easements to go back, so it's more of a gentle.
Okay.
It's not just a steep drop off.
of? Okay.
Yeah.
So none of it would require any kind of a landscaping block to
No.
build like a little wall there for
No.
any of their,
Yeah, we'll just regrade it to blend it into the yard.
okay. So I'm just trying to think, if people got a decent yard to mow,
Yeah.
if they end up with a real steep thing, it'd be hard to work with, so. So moved.
Second.
Any other questions for John for this? Clerk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Yeager. Friesman.
Aye.
Resolution 3419 is approved. Next is the consideration for the second reading of ordinance 1128 regarding sump pump discharge. Discussion.
Yes, as you mentioned, this is the second reading of this ordinance. This is upgrading our stormwater utility ordinance as part of the code. And as we talked about in the past, we have issues where sump pumps are discharging directly out into the street. It creates issues during the summertime, as well as icing issues in the wintertime. And what we want to do is update that ordinance, as well as we're going to be placing sub-drains in different areas to allow for an outlet for these sump pumps. And where there's people have access to storm sewer directly to the lot, or whether we have placed sub-drains, what we want to do is allow them that opportunity to connect to the sub-drain or the storm sewer. And what we'll do is, instead of having to have separate agreements with each individual, that'll just be done by permit. We'll inspect the work. The ordinance amendment also establishes the size of the discharge pipes. And just like the private agreement or the individual agreements had also included an indemnification clause, the ordinance will indemnify the city for the city's protection. Lastly, What this will also do is if if the discharge is creating a nuisance, and we've installed the sub-drain, or there's storm sewer available, and the homeowner will not hook up to those storm sewer facilities, and it's creating a nuisance, this will allow the city to make that connection and assess the cost back to the property owner. The first reading was approved at the last council meeting, so I recommend approval of the second reading.
Has anyone received any comments? since the first
I'm not
reading?
receiving any comments.
There's just one odd comment, but what they're reading. They thought with the letter they received up there that the city was going around buying if the house is affected, and clarified that they should reread the letter, so that's not at all what we're doing.
And the specifications for the pipe, if I remember that discussion correctly, that was the minimum size for the pipe?
Correct, yeah.
Inch and a half.
Inch and a half.
So you gotta
That's
go
minimum, yeah.
bigger than that if you can, but
Yeah.
just wanted to double check.
Yeah, that's good.
I still move.
Should that be in there? To say establishes the minimum size rather than establishes the size?
It does say minimum. It should.
It just says establish size, well, in the notes,
In
it
the
says
notes,
the size of the
size.
discharge line is inch and a half.
Yeah, the actual ordinance says minimum.
Inside diameter minimum.
Yeah.
Okay.
It does, yeah.
All right, yeah, they've done, that was just the notes.
I'll second the motion.
I don't think we had a first yet, have we?
Yep.
Yes,
Delane did.
Delane motion.
Any other discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Ammon.
Aye.
We will have the second reading of ordinance 1128.
An ordinance amending chapter 100 of the Charles City Code of Ordinances by adding new sections 100.13, 100.14, 100.15, and 100.16 for the purpose of providing for regulations for the connection of sump pump systems into the public stormwater sewer system.
Thank you. Next is consideration of the first reading of ordinance 1129 for tree trimming. Discussion for this one.
Yeah, this follows up on our discussions we've had on tree trimming in the right of way. And as we discussed at our workshop, this particular ordinance is what will allow the adjacent or the abutting property owner to trim those trees that are in the public right of way. So what you have here is an ordinance that updates portions of Code 124 and a portion of Code 151. Basically, the section 124.06, a lot of ways it reads the same. Who can trim the trees? City employees, abutting property owners can trim the trees on their property. Then it also goes on to say that they can also trim the trees in the publicly owned street and right of way abutting the owner's private property. Section 151.03, which is the duty to trim, basically just states that the property owner is to trim it to 15 feet street side, 8 feet on the sidewalk side. They have, for notice, we have to give them 5 days. None of this has changed. The only part that changes, basically, that final sentence which talks about, that it's unlawful for any person to trim or cut a tree in a public place unless this work is done under the supervision of the city. So the city, does, still monitor the work that's happening, but the abutting property owner can trim it themselves. I think that's really about it that addresses that, but basically it's a pretty big change in that, we've required property owners to trim those trees, we just haven't given them the ability to do it themselves. They've had to hire somebody that's licensed to do it, so now they're still responsible for doing it, they can just do it with their, do it on their own, so. You can't do your neighbor's tree, but you can do your own trees that are out the right of way. So, with that, I recommend the first reading of ordinance 1129.
There's no requirement for a property owner to come up and get any kind of a permit or any kind of notice. If they got to trim a tree, they just go ahead and do it. Correct.
Right, I mean, they have to do it to city standards, which, it's they're not real precise, we just want to make sure they're at least 15 foot, 8 foot on the other side, so
And do it carefully.
do it carefully. But we do suggest that if it is beyond your means to do it, that you should possibly hire a licensed professional.
And if not, they are responsible for damages.
Yes.
I so move for the first reading.
Any further discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Yeager.
We'll then have the first reading of ordinance 1129.
Ordinance number 1129, an ordinance amending section 124.03, exceptions, section 124.06, workmanship, and section 151.03, duty to trim trees of the Charles City Code of Ordinances for the purpose of requiring private property owners to trim trees on publicly owned property or right-of-way abutting the owner's private property.
Thank you. Next, we'll have consideration of resolution 3519, which is setting a public hearing on application for the SRF loan and WRRF improvement projects.
Yes.
Discussion.
Yeah, basically what we're doing here is we're setting public hearing for May 6th at 6 PM to consider the SRF application for the water resource recovery facility and the environmental information that goes with that. So we'll be receiving a packet here from Fox Engineering that'll speak in more detail as to what the project entails. And so anybody from the public is certainly welcome to come in and review that. Then we will have the public hearing that discusses that at that May 6th meeting, if that's the date you said, which I hope it is.
And when will we get those documents?
Should be any day now.
Need a motion there, right?
Yep.
I move.
Second.
Any further discussion?
And this is all to do with just the new plant.
Yep, these are all part of the required steps that we have to go through for the plant project.
Any other discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
We'll set that hearing for May the 6th. Next is consideration of resolution 3619, which is approving the design plans for the 401 North Main window and door replacement project. Discussion here.
Yeah,
That's
that's,
why Mark was still there.
What's that?
I said, now I know why Mark was still there.
yep, so this is a project that's been on our list for the last couple of years. We've been putting some money back each year to hopefully get this done. And so we were able to get a grant from the Hotel Motel Tax Committee here this spring for $10,000. So it brings our total funding available up to $50,000, and the estimated project cost is right at about $51,000. What this will do is replace the front entryway of the 401 North Main building, where our chamber, ADC, and community revitalization, community foundation are located. So right now we've got glass in there that it's not very effective in keeping the heat in and the cold out, or vice versa. And the doors will frost over and actually oftentimes will freeze shut. So not a very good condition. We're also looking to make the front entryway handicap accessible, which it's currently not ADA compliant. So we'll be getting that done. With the additional $10,000, that's going to help offset the cost of making it a visitors information center. So that'll have 24-hour, 7-day-a-week access to that front vestibule area. It kind of ties in with our wayfinding project, so now we'll be able to put visitors information on the wayfinding to help guide them to that area. As we discussed the other night, we were talking about, this also replaces the door at the rear entrance as well. But a lot of the work will be focused on the front. What we talked about last week was entering the building and having the traffic guided to the right. We've changed that back and forth a couple of times, and we've landed on traffic coming in and entering to the left. Okay. So that's going to be the best workflow for the office, and so I'm just requesting that the council take action to approve these plans, and we'll be releasing this out to bidders this week for a project that we hope to get started here in June and be completed by August, September.
There's really no facade changes or anything like that, it's just the windows and the doors on the front and back.
Right. We do have some lettering that we're looking at putting on the building out front, and those are, depending on, those might be areas where we can, if we have to cut on costs, those are some things we can reduce in scope. But yeah, otherwise it's staying with the Main Street character, we're gonna have our office to follow that as well. So it'll stay with the look and theme of the building.
It's a decent building, but it definitely needs some help, because you get in there, if you've ever spent any time in there, it's not good with the moisture that's on those windows and doors.
Next step will be working with the lighting.
I know there's nothing in the current budget, but I'm assuming that the landlord has no intention of adjusting the rent for the tenant at this point.
If we had to adjust the rate for the tenant, we'd have to adjust the amount we give the tenants.
Well, I know we're gonna pay for it one way or the other. I just thought I'd mention that.
No plans at this time.
It's just being a good landlord.
Second.
Any further discussion?
And just the little vestibule area on the front there, that's gonna be about 3 feet bigger than it is now, as far as deep into the building,
Yep, approximately.
what I can think anyway.
But all that won't be into the building, part of that will be coming, because that is inset right now. And the new entryway will be flush with the front of the building, so it'll be partway going out, and partway going in. So the whole 3 feet won't come from the inside. We were talking about that the other day over there. It's not as much loss of space as it looks like, because part of it will be on the outside. Any further discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jaeger.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Emmett.
Aye.
Resolution 3619 is approved, and do we have a bid date when those will be, when the bids will be?
We do, I just don't have it in front of me. I think probably in about the next 3-4 weeks,
Okay,
we should be seeing that again to approve those bids.
okay, good. All right, any miscellaneous correspondence
None,
tonight?
Your Honor.
Brad, anything for you to report tonight?
No, Your Honor.
City clerk report.
I always have something to say.
Sure.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Yeah, the next meeting is going to be a planning session on the 25th of March at 6 o'clock. And we also need to know if it would be okay with you guys if we moved that April 10th planning session, which is scheduled for a Wednesday, to that Monday, April 8th. Do any of you see a problem with that?
I absolutely support that.
Okay.
I do too.
You do too?
It's Monday, April 8th.
That'll be April 8th, correct?
Mayor and I will be in,
Planning session
and, well, no, not Mark. We'll be in Grinnell for a conference, so.
on the 10th, right? And I'm going to be gone to my conference
You're
as well
gone.
in Des Moines, so.
Yeah.
Seems like it would have been a great night for me.
Oh, man.
Sounds
that
good.
You still
hurts.
can. Don't hurt my feelings.
Just vote against this resolution. That's-
You
You
can
can
throw
still,
your head
you
out
can
of the
still
way.
meet then.
Okay, so that's okay, we'll make that change then, so that'll be good.
Meeting on April 8th.
April 8th, correct, yep, so cross out the 10th for that meeting. That's all I have.
Nothing else?
Yep,
All
that's
right.
all I have.
City administrators report.
I'll just mention that this week, I've got my IMMI conference in Iowa City Wednesday through Friday, so I'll be heading out for that. A few extra duties this year, being president of the association, and with also with the change of the Institute of Public Affairs, that's kind of a change too, because now our association is taking on more of the duties with this, along with Iowa State Extension and the League of Cities. So looking forward to that, and looking forward to a new, fresh start with the IMMI. So that's Wednesday through Friday. Other than that, yeah, I think that's about all I have tonight.
Anybody have any board or commission or committee reports tonight?
Is there any way that we could get kind of an update on where things are at with the McClellan project and a workshop coming up? If there's anything. going on and on.
So you're talking to the wrong guy.
The lawsuit happens, not.
I
How
think
about
we can
how
get-
about John?
I think we can get a report, but it'll probably be a pretty short report.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, lawsuit's gonna happen
it's been
first.
quite a while since we've talked about that.
Aside from it being on the front page of the Des Moines Register a few weeks ago, there's really nothing else new that I'm aware of, unfortunately.
Any other comments or questions? Now, I have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
Channel 6 being here.